It's the track.
Okay, recording the podcast Saturday, February the 14th. Back down at sea level, Shane Rhode. I feel like Hisham El Garouge coming down from a training camp in Ifran down to sea level. That's how I'm feeling right now. I could probably run a sub 6 mile, mate.
Sub 6. That's actually fast these days.
I think I still can. I do that every now and then up at Forest Park. Day later for you, Shane, Auckland, New Zealand. How are things going over at Track Stitch HQ? You're not in the corporate office this morning, I see.
Well, just because I embarrassingly just rolled out of bed. I've slept through my alarm. I've been under the pump at the moment, so that's all right. It's life. The cycle of life.
Hey, so let's get into it because we've got an action-packed podcast yet again. Hey, a bit of housekeeping first. Some of the fans have been requesting a debut on Spotify for the Track Stitch podcast. I said that I'd put the tech team onto it. I don't think the fans fully understand this. There isn't actually a tech team, a dedicated tech team that does this. It's me, and I don't have that much time. But we'll do our best to try and get this onto Spotify. I guess that would be technically taking that next step in the world of professional podcasting. So, yeah, let's see if we can get that one done. Had a few comparisons out there from one of our new avid listeners. He's a younger fellow. He made some comparisons to the Let's Run podcast and the Citius podcast. He said, you're almost up to that level. But he did also say, you're not the Running Effect podcast.
I don't even know what the Running Effect podcast is.
Yeah, because we're rebels. Well, I mean, I can tell you we're not because there's definitely a few experiences that the crew on the Track Stitch have had that none of those podcasts have had before. So we're unique, mate. We're our own entity. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that was like a compliment or a little jab or not. But anyway, good to know that we're engaging the younger viewers and getting the juices flowing, mate.
Oh, excellent. That's very good. So
yeah, tons to talk about. Last week, I jumped on the pod at the end because Femke had just run her 800-meter debut. We missed it, as always. Same way that we're going to miss the Cole Hocker versus Sam Ruthe showdown that is happening in about 3 hours' time, I believe. But
I've got it a bit later. I've got it at 1:25 New Zealand time, 1:25 p.m. Yeah.
I think it's about 4:30 East Coast time in the US, which is about 1.
I thought it was later.
Oh well. Either way,
no.
we're jumping the shark. We're early again, so we can of course give our thoughts on it and see if it actually happens or not. Maybe I'll jump back on the pod do an emergency segment if something crazy goes down. But last week was the much anticipated debut of Femke over 800. Now again, I jumped on the pod, gave a little bit of analysis, but said that we're going to absolutely circle back on this one because it spawns out into so many interesting topics. First topic is, of course, the big 4-way wager that went down. I did mention that I was the winner of this one, so kudos to me.
You did very well. Quite well. You predicted how it would unfold as well.
Well, like I said to you off here, it wasn't like it was an amazing, it was a little bit of a milquetoast prediction, but it did sort of play out.
Yeah. No, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. You predicted exactly how it was going to play out.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah.
Justin Rinaldi, big fan of the podcast, former guest, part of the 800-meter spectacular we did about 3 months ago. A little bit off the mark on this one, Justin. Thought I'd just dig that in there because he's an Australian and we've got this rivalry. 158.2 was his prediction. Gave him a bit of a rasp over that one, but he did point out that he picked Josh Hoey exactly. He actually did. He said Josh Hoey 142.50 indoors. That was, and I didn't mention it on the podcast, so he said to me that I have to mention that he'd picked that one exactly. Anyway, 1:59.07, Shane, 47th indoor performance all time for a debut. So she cracks the top 50. I don't know if that's something, momentous or not, but I guess that's a little interesting fact. That's why you come to the Track Stitch podcast. Shane, eye test. What did you think about her debut there?
I'm a naysayer to those who think she's going to be a Keeley or a Georgia Hunter Bell level athlete. I thought she looked really good. I thought she looked more fluent than I'd seen videos of her training at that slightly slow 800 meter pace. Overall, like you said, B plus. I maybe even A minus. I think it was. We can get a little bit. It's a bit confusing, is the best way to put it, about what all these times mean these days, because everyone seems to run a lot quicker than, say, pre-2019. But put it this way, if it was 2015 and she rocked up and she ran 1:59 flat indoors, you'd say, Jesus, this athlete's going to be a very good 800 meter runner coming from the 400 hurdles. So, no, I thought she did well. In terms of what it means for her, I still haven't revised what I think about her challenging, say, the top women, like your Hunter Bells and your Keeleys and the who's the lady who won the Odera, and there are others. Audrey Veto's coming through. Yeah. I mean, Wiley's pretty good on her day. There's a lot of good women. There's the woman who just ran, beat Rushing Willis 157 low indoors. I mean, I don't see her as ever being strong enough. And the race unfolded as you said it would. She was 128, and she's a 49-point athlete. That last 200, she did well for the type of athlete with the type of aerobic strength she has. But you've got Nothing Moo, who's was a 49-point athlete, no slower than Femke, but was about a 4-minute 1500 meter runner. And but I also believe that Nothing Moo was past her best when she ran that 4:03. I think she probably could have run 3:58 or 4 flat at least. So I think I haven't revised my feeling about Femke in the 800.
Yeah, and I think we're actually really aligned on that one too. We can dive in deeper to it, but because I think it's a really interesting topic. So the splits 27.2, 29.8. So she hits 400 exactly in 57 flat, which was absolute perfect, wave light warrior work there. You could see her, almost consciously, when you see these athletes right on the top of the green light band, the back of the blue, that they've got that in mind. So she was basically 57 flat all the way through. Third 200, that's where she was always going to struggle. And that's where I think even traditionally the women struggle as well to keep that impetus going. 31.86 for that next segment. And honestly, at that point, I went back and rewatched the race a couple of times. I thought the wheels were going to fall off there, and they really could have, right? So just looking at those splits, you go 27.2, 29.8. That's a pretty high differential, 2-second differential, and then another 2 seconds to 31.8. It really could have fallen off there for her, but she did do well to come back and run 30.2. Really dug in hard to hang on to the back of the lights and run that time. But I think for me, I just really wonder how that's going to work for her when she actually gets into a competitive race. And I think there's a massive difference between what we saw there in Metz last weekend, running in what was ultimately a glorified time trial, because that wasn't really a race. There was nobody around her. There was no challenging for spots in the first 200 meters. There was no jostling on the track. There were no pace up and downs. And I just really wonder how she's going to be able to handle that against the experienced 800-meter girls like Keeley, like Vero, like Odera, like Georgia Hunter Bell. I don't know, man. I agree with you. I said it was also a B+. I was right on that cusp too. Should it be an A given the circumstances? And it was a good time. But man, it's going to be really interesting, I think, when we actually see her in a big race against some of these experienced women and what they're going to be able to do to disrupt her rhythm, because she is a 400-meter runner, is used to running in a lane by herself, and people say, oh, she runs the 4x400, but it's not the same, right? You don't run in a big pack. You're not converging in a pack in the 4x400 like you are in an 800. So I think that's absolutely something that we should take into account, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out next time around.
Yeah, I don't think the 400-meter the 4x400 conversion. I know what people I've heard say that, it's relevant the way she really comes on that last 100, but it's another whole lap. And like you said, it's in the pack. It's not relevant. And doesn't mean she's got more transferability than, say, a 1-2 runner who's really petering out the last 50 and holding on for a still very fast 400 time. Absolutely it does.
Yeah.
But all it does, it means that she could even run that 2 laps of a track pretty competently, which clearly she can. She's at the top of that band of those type of athletes. It doesn't put her into the world leaders just because she looks good coming on at the last. It's kind of a very simplistic analysis.
Yeah. And so again, like this career prospect thing, she's 25 years of age. And some people will look at that and say, well, that's young. What's the problem there? But we always talk about this. Spoke about it with Justin. We've talked about it on the podcast before. As an athlete at this level, you rarely get more than 3 to 4 years of kind of like your absolute max at any distance. And it's not a per event situation, right? So it's not like you have a career as a 1,500 meter runner and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, when that 3 to 4 years is over, I've got another 3 to 4 years in the 5K. And it's, that's definitely a Jakob Ingebrigtsen sort of thing. We'll talk about that in a sec. But, what people, I guess, fail to understand with her is that she's really, or maybe they don't. She's been really world-class since all the way back in 2023, right? That's when she really broke onto the scene. She was the world champion that year. She ran 51.45 in the hurdles, 400 hurdles, which, by the way, even though she has run faster now, it would still rank her as the second all-time performer ever. And just think about it this way. If Sydney McLaughlin-Navroni had come along into this world and decided to be a model or a pianist or a soccer player, she wasn't on the scene, we would be talking about Femke Bols as by far the most transcendent 400-meter hurdle on the women's side we've ever seen, the greatest of all time. She would have been a multiple-time world champion, the world record holder, all these sorts of things. So she's been really at the top of her game in the 400 hurdles for at least 3 years now. So if you go back to this theory on athletes able to run at their absolute max, like performance, doesn't mean that they're not good athletes outside of those windows. Justin said this too. There's a difference between career form to be able to win like an Olympic medal or compete and then run your absolute best. It's like, I just don't, how much space does she really have to go here? And I'll tell you this, man, if she ended up running, say, what some people think she might, which is under 155 and even a potential world record challenge, I think you have to look and say, man, did she just waste her career in the 400 hurdles? Because if she was able to do this at this point in her career, is she the most transcendent 800-meter talent we've actually ever seen? You know what I'm saying? Like, why was she doing the 400 hurdles all these years? Because if she can come in towards the end of her peak window and run these kinds of times, shouldn't she always have been running the 800 meters to begin with? I get how it's incredibly easy to be bullish on her, but even though it was a good performance, everything, I'm with you. I'm not quite as sure.
I don't think even if this is my take. It's just my take, and that's why we do.
Yeah.
All
just opinion. So nobody's saying
people,
it's right.
Yeah, and people have argued with me, and that's fine. I respect that. It doesn't incite me in any way. But you've got to be a real champion, and I found it. My mother the other day actually was cleaning out the loft and found some great stuff. Actually, some old running magazines that you and I used to write in.
She found something else, mate.
Oh, she could have found a lot of things, but in this case, this is a PG podcast. We want to get some sponsors, so we're going to get that out of it. No, but we found a book by David Martin on training, middle distance training. Do you remember the book? I've got it. It's so good. I've got to try and get it. It's right over here.
Oh, grab it.
Oh, sorry.
This is the sort of innovation that we have on the podcast. It all happens real time here. It's no faking.
It's you sort of got the perfect view into our living room, so to speak, about the realities of life, modern living. Look at this.
Better Training for Distance Runners. Yes, I had that book as well. It is It's such a good nerdy read, right?
It's a very nerdy read.
Oh my God.
Here is the what really twigged my memory is Martin it's got a big section about the 800, and his view was that it is way more aerobic. And I'll dig out the sections in coming weeks in the podcast, but it is way more aerobic than people actually think it is. Yeah. And the layperson's relaying of his theory is that if you get an athlete, I think this is one of the examples, like who can run 50 seconds for 400, and they're on the slower side of the 800 type. He said they may be going through in 52 or 53 seconds, so they're at about 90 to 95% of their maximum speed. Yet they have to run another lap and the way they used to do it in the old days with the big positive split. Exactly. So they'd have to run another lap at about 78 to 83% of their speed. They're maxed out for 400. So it's not a 400-meter runner's game. No. And with her, like, the reason I don't think she can run 154 or probably even 155 low is that it's not that she's not a great athlete. She is, but the particular skill set that she wields doesn't easily translate into the type of work you need to do to be very strong over the last 300 of an 800. It doesn't matter your raw speed over, say, 400. What matters is how you can translate that and hold that in terms of speed strength. As Peter Coe said, and I think he's quoted in the book, speed hurts and sustained speed kills. And that's the whole Sebi Coe double kick thing. Right. Georgia Hunter Bell's a 352, was it 352, 1500-meter runner? Yeah. She was the world duathlon champion. Kelly Hodgkinson, slightly different type of athlete, not, say, aerobically, proficient over, say, 15, 3K. She did a lot of cross country growing up. She's a distance type athlete who's got beautiful speed, strength, and cruising speed. Kelly Hodgkinson is also very strong physically. It's very physically strong. So is Lilian O'Dera. So is Audrey Vero. I just don't see with Femke. I just don't see the characteristics that makes me think, oh, she's going to be really strong. And the way she ran that indoor race, don't be too hard on her because it was her first outing, was to me suggestive of she did very, very well. But even as you said, to run 30.2 for the last 200 was very, very good. But she had to go to almost 32 second speed for the 200 before it, which says to me that that's exactly the weakness we think that's the exact type of weakness we think is going to prohibit her being into that next echelon of 800-meter runners. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, and that's why
I'll happily be proved wrong, because if she's in the mix to win diamond, it'll be freaking exciting. So I'm not sitting there going. One of our mates in our little bet was going, "Oh, you guys, how do you feel about that?" I'm like, "Mate, I don't care. Like, if she does beats my prediction, no one cares what I think. I'm not going to be sitting there going, "Oh my God, I was wrong."
Accusation of negativity and pessimism, like no. But that's why I found it, to be honest, like it was kind of easy for me, I guess, to make that prediction fairly accurately, right? I mean, I predicted that she would go through in 57, 128 at 600, and I thought she'd run 31 seconds for the last 300. She ended up running, just under that, 30.2. But because I felt like and particularly when I saw the field that wasn't that strong, and I guess I was able to ascertain that it was going to be more of a glorified time trial, it became kind of easy, at least in my mind, to picture how it was potentially going to go. I mean, you guys weren't too far off because, mate, honestly, if that trend had continued through 600 meters, I think you had her just over 2 minutes, which also, by the way, would have been a fantastic opening debut. That wouldn't have been a disaster either. That's what she would have ended up running. I think the other thing too, to that physiology stuff you're saying, and I mentioned this just briefly before, is the 400-meter runner, right? They are very proficient at running right under that anaerobic threshold, or just fractionally over it for the full distance of the 400 meters. But what they typically don't tend to handle very well are little fluctuations in the pace that we see hurt so many athletes, right? And I think that's going to be the killer of that 400-meter runner when they have to do what the 800-meter runner does, which is have these little fluctuations in pace. You're going down that that back straight the first time after the break point, and you need to accelerate into a little hole to get position, or you need to back off, or you need to react to things that happen in races. It really, I feel like that's almost, it's not just a physiological thing, it's also a mental intuition thing. You have to intuitively know how to do it, when to do it, and also be able to handle it while it's happening in race. And I just think that that's something that comes with experience, and I just don't know if she has enough time in her career to sort of develop those skills. So I think eventually I could absolutely see her running, say, under 157. And I know people be like, they'll get up in arms and go, but she ran 159 in her first race and it was only the first year. I'm like, again, I just think like she's coming on the back end of her career peak in terms of her physical ability. And again, it's just opinion, right? Doesn't mean we're right.
And another thing as well that's important, relevant, is you and I growing up, we're at the track a lot in our teens, and sprinters had a different attitude or way of being. They sat around a lot because their body needed to recover 100%, and then they were full out all the time. But they were sitting around a lot of joking, a lot of funny drills, a lot of Walkmans on. Remember the old Walkman?
Yeah.
And you could be forgiven as a much younger man that they were lazy because they were always, but they needed to recover for the next 100% effort, right?
Yeah.
Very different attitude to a distance runner's attitude, where there was less intensity and a lot more jogging rounds, so to speak, and a lot more volume. So if you compare her to three athletes, Rasheen Willis, Juliet Whittaker, and Maggie Congdon, she is considerably quicker and has better mechanics than all three of those athletes. Okay. Yeah. Juliet Whittaker's been running for Stanford a couple of 1500s miles. She kind of, I think they had a theory when she first went there after getting, was it second or maybe third at World Juniors in the 800, that she was going to be more of a miler because she's not real quick over 400. No. So they were trying to make her to a miler, but she sort of shuffles a bit, Juliet Whittaker. She looks even worse when she tries to run like the mile 1500, and she's decidedly ordinary at the mile 1500. Yet her sister, I see, is a very, very good Isabella Whittaker 400 meter runner. She had the quickest time in the world before all the sort of heavy hitters got going last year. And she at least won, was it 2 Diamond Leagues? So she's a 49 low 400 meter runner, maybe a bit quicker. So she's obviously got some genes there, but she had obviously years of being a distance runner. I see she run cross country, she's run the mile, 1500, and she's obviously quick enough, but she's not super quick. Rasheen Willis, I would say, was probably even weaker over 1500 mile than Whittaker. Again, not the 400 meter mentality, but she's got good speed strength, and she's physically very strong. Maggie Congdon, I see, ran. Is it NAU? I don't follow it that closely, which has come up. Is it NAU? Is that where she was?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, she did quite a bit of, like, obviously all the cross country, the 3,000, 5,000, the mile. But she was she was a pretty good 400 meter runner. You know? Yeah. I think Heather McLean, I believe, was a 400 meter runner too before she got into the 800, 1500. So they've got a background of many, many years thinking and training like distance runners. And it makes a big difference, doesn't it, Jason? It's not an overnight thing. It's a mentality thing, and that's imbued them with that strength. So I think someone like Maggie Congdon is a much better prospect over in the women's 800 than Femke Bols, because she's got that nice running form, and she's strong and compact, and she comes on beautifully, like Georgia Hunter-Bell, that last 150. They come on like a freight train, but it's deceptive, because what they're really doing is just not slowing down as much.
Yes. And I think as well, we live in this world, man, where we're always pushing to look at things in quantifiable measures these days. We want to just look at numbers and believe that numbers lead to everything, and they're important, but there's also there's the non-quantifiable metrics, and there's just, sometimes it's not everything's explainable by numbers, because if you just look at numbers, you can make a case for almost anything, right? And in this case,
like what you told me. It's like what you told me when I was first getting more interested in the NBA again a few years ago. You put all these guys on super teams together. It's like three, what do they call them? Hall of Famers. You'd have like Harden and Durant and all that. And you'd think with 60% of the team dominated by Hall of Famers, surely these guys just win without even almost having to turn up. they were hopeless. And it's the same with this. It's a great fantasy pick. It's like, oh my God, she did this, and it's very on a very surface level. It works. But then when the reality, like you just said, all these intangibles that build an athlete into being what they are on a given day at age 25, that all matters. Like years and years and years of exposure to not only the training, but the attitudes, the culture, a way of being. It's very hard to come from one. If she does it, like that's even more miraculous. And like you said, perhaps she was fathered into the wrong event, but it's just, it's very difficult.
Shana, I feel like we're appealing more to the older generation of the likes of Sammy Maloney and Jeff Shaw, Craig Kirkwood, and not the younger generation. Our younger fans may be up in arms over this.
But I don't think they should be, because and they can do whatever they want, because we're not saying that necessarily all the training from back in the day and the long, slow distance. We're not saying we believe in all that, because you've got incontrovertible evidence right in front of you that some of that's been issued for the better. But we're talking about a change, a morphing of a whole way of being inside 6 to 12 months. So it's a difficult thing.
Hey, so back to the splits, right? I mean, what I noticed, I went back and had a look at some of the performances of Keely last season, because I for a while there, I guess she still holds the moniker of the excellence of execution in the 800. I was very impressed with the way she was executing those races in terms of her pace judgment, etc. But very, very common way to run the 800 meters for the women these days, with this faster opening 200 meters and then 3 kind of even but average splits, right? And we saw the men run this way all the way up into the 2020s. I mean, the most famous run of all is the Kip Keita race in Zurich, where they go through in like 23 flat or maybe even under 48.3 at the bell, etc., etc. If you look at some of the men's top performances in recent years, I wrote this down, right? Wanyoni's 141.11. This was from Lausanne in 2024. 50 flat for the first lap, 51.1. So this lap differential is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, right? In Paris, he won the Olympic gold medal, 141.19, 50.28 for the first lap, 50.91 for the second lap. Marco Arup in that race, famously only 1/100th of a second behind. He opened in 25.2 for his first 200 and closed in 25.2, right? It's just, when we start looking at how we're going to get close to this world record on the women's side, there just also has to be like this kind of fundamental shift, or how are we going to get there with the women? Because, again, we look at what Femke did. It's just it seems like a very repetitive race structure. And, I even think about Keely and George Hunter Bell, and I know, for example, Trevor Painter, very famous at the moment, the M11 group over in the UK, doing a fantastic job, but just don't seem to really be. Why can't the woman really put the pieces of the puzzle together over the 800 meters to elevate them more towards this world record? And listen to this, mate. I don't know if I was to, say to you just intuitively, where do you think the women's 800 meter world record ranks versus, other world records around it? What would you say? Would you be like, oh, it's obviously it was set back in the 80s by Kratovic-Lova?
Are you talking about in terms of world athletics points?
Yeah, just a relative standing of it. You would think that given nobody.
Intuitively, or do you mean like analytically?
Yeah, just intuitively.
I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It seems impossible, right? But listen to this, and again, we say this in context all the time. The points and everything is relative. But if we look at this world record, 153.28, as this drug-fueled impossible mark, but the reality is it's comparatively poor to the 1500 and the 400 meters, the two events that bookend it. So 48.0 seconds in the 400 meters, which isn't even the fastest time in the last decade. In fact, we've now had 2 women under that. We had NASA was just over 48 seconds. Shawnee Miliwibo was running in the low 48s. The comparative time for over 800 meters is 153.17 for a 48-second flat 400. In the 1500 meters, 351.0, and we've had Kip Yeagon, Jess Hull, Gudef Sige all run under this. A number of women, sort of approaching this 351 barrier, the equivalent is 153.65 on the 800 meter side, and that suggests to me that we're massively under indexing ourselves here in the women's 800 meters. Why is this event not better than it is? Because it is certainly a highly run event with a lot of talent funneling into it. It is run incredibly often on the circuit. There's no excuses, and yet just breaking 155, which is still a big deal on the women's side, is really not, it's not stacking up versus other events. Like why are we struggling so much?
You're more the analytical guy in terms of the real technical, but particularly with something like that 100 than me. So I'm not going to really venture into something I think is would stand up to any kind of scrutiny. But my gut, my intuition is that the thing that women lack, as opposed to men more than anything else, is physical strength. And a lot of stuff I read when I was trying to make my way, in the 800, and I loved it. And I used to read because that's the sort of mind I've got, was that the 800 is a pure strength event, arguably as much or more so than the 400 hurdles. It's a real strength event because you're at such a high percentage of your top speed. You have to carry that bloody human corpse run another lap. And I just feel like possibly in the 800, the women, and if you look at the athletes over the time Kelly Holmes, when she won her double, looked ripped as. Matola was ripped as. And Akiro, just bringing out some names from the past. Keely looks like a strong young woman. Lillian O'Dera is strong. Georgia Hunter Bell, a bit different. I want to talk about that in a minute. Aerobically, 352 woman, So I just wonder whether they're just not strong enough. There's not someone come through with enough talent that's also really strong.
And maybe it's that, like, just looking at those patterns of those opening 200s, maybe this is just something where, like if 153 flat is maybe a benchmark that we're going to run, I don't understand why you wouldn't mimic that, what we're seeing on the men's side with this positive split really shrinking down. Maybe we got to look at, say, 56 flat for the first lap, 57 flat for the second lap. I don't see why that shouldn't be possible, but I really think that an opening 200 meters that's, dramatically, so say if you wanted to run a 56 opening lap, you can run it, obviously, you could run it 26:30, you could run it 27:29, you could run it 28:28. I just wonder if, they really need to be taking a page out of the book of a guy like A-Rop and trying to run as slow as possible on that opening 200, because I just wonder if that is it's just too damaging to then, it's obviously pushing past that, anaerobic threshold just that little bit too much, not to the point of fatigue, but it's just filling that cup enough that then it becomes very, very difficult to maintain that speed down the back straight in the third 200 meters. Exactly what we saw with Femke. Exactly what we see in all these golden leagues, despite the, even Keely, she still struggles with maintaining that rhythm down the back straight. But it is an interesting one moving forward, and that's why I think the reason why I brought that up is it ties back into Femke's prospects for the world record, which some people believe she's incredibly.
We better wrap this up because I don't have heaps of time. I'll make one last point on it though, just a quick point, is Hunter Bell, in the Diamond League just before the Olympics, she hung off the pace way too much and should have caught, was it Vero in the last sort of 50 and didn't, because it was the Diamond League final, I think it was. Or did she win that? I can't remember. But there was a Diamond League just before and they all ran very fast and she came from miles back. So in the World Champs, she was closer. But unfortunately, so obviously Trevor Painter and his wife had decided, don't be so far back, give yourself a chance to win this thing, because she absolutely could have won it. But I think what happened is because the Kenyan lady went so crazy, Hunter Bell being closer was a bit quick, and she didn't actually come off the bend like she often can. So I actually think Keely, I'm not sure where she goes. She's won now. She's young. She's gorgeous. She's famous in Britain. I don't know. I'm not saying she's going to be a non-factor, but I don't know. I'm not sure about Keely, but I think Hunter Bell could maybe run low 154. I don't see why not. Yeah. And she looked awesome in that 1500 the other day. She just toasted them. It wasn't a big event, but no, she's good.
All right. Okay. Well, there you go. That was we had some criticism a while ago that we weren't focusing enough on the women's events and what's going on in women's track and field. So there you go. That's a solid half an hour on Femke Bols and the women's 800 moving forward. Big event today, and we still confusion over when it actually is, but we know it is happening today. Shano, this is the biggest race of young Sam Ruth's career. Takes on the Olympic champion Cole Hocker in the 1500. Yeah, I mean mile 1500 in the mile. What's your expectations for this one? Will the PR train stop? Listen to this one. I went back and had a look at this because I love the numbers and the stats. Since the beginning of December, he's had 8 races, right? And if you remove that New Zealand secondary schools 1500 meter final where he basically walked the final 150 in a premeditated fashion, he's PR'd in every single race. Every single race he has run PRs, from 800, the 1K, 1500, the mile a couple of times, now the 5,000 meters. If it continues today, he's going to run, obviously under. Well,
here's a question for you. Like if you had to put your own money on it, your own hard-earned folding on it, I mean, could you really bet against him? Because I couldn't.
I know. But how do you just quickly, because this is such an awesome race, we just have to watch it and see how it goes. We won't get too deep into predictions, but how do you think this race is going to go? The pace is set for 154. I don't have a clue. No clue?
I don't. No idea.
I'm going to make a public proclamation. We'll be able to check and see if it's right. I think what's going to happen in this one, I think Cole Hocker is going to take the lead in this race because we've seen Hocker, he's happy to lead the pack. He did at the beginning of the 2 mile in Millrose. We've seen him do this at the US Champs multiple times before. I think he's going to lead this one out. However, I do think that in that third lap, he just has... It's not that he doesn't have the ability to continue driving the pace, which is also important in the mile. That was always seen as that critical third lap in the mile, right? I think he's going to just subconsciously not slow down massively, but I think he's going to rein it back enough that he can really put a vicious kick on the field in the final, 2 laps, obviously indoors, so the final 400. So I'm guessing that they're going to get to about the 800, kind of about 155. I think probably the 1209 in about 253, and then I think you're going to see him run a 54 point to run 348 low is my prediction. I think that young Sam, he's got a number of nicknames now. Sam Ruthless, Ruth apparently, or the Junior Ruthinator, however you want to call it. I think he's probably going to be pretty close to what he ran on the BU Bouncy Castle track, maybe just a little bit slower. Anyway, that's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with all that. I mean, with a normal athlete, you'd kind of at some point go, oh, the attention and the PBs, surely you're going to get to a point where you're going to have a bad race, and maybe that's today, but you kind of don't want to, A, you don't want that to happen, but B, it's like the normal rules don't seem to apply to Sam Ruth in terms of
exactly.
He's a freak. I mean, it's going to be so exciting to watch it. Cole won't want to lose to him, so I think you're right about he'll want a reasonable pace because he won't want it real slow. And at the same time, he said even if it's an unconscious thing, he'll let it lag a bit, and then he'll absolutely fire up the big washing machine kick in the last 100 to make sure this young tacker doesn't beat him. I mean, the most incredible thing though is if Ruth beat him, I wouldn't be that shocked. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, like he beat the Olympic champion, because he's just run 3:48.8. I went back and watched it just came up on one of my feeds, that race. I mean, forget his age. And I hear what you were saying about, a lot of people I see on the board saying like he's very developed. Sure, but he's now a 3:48.8 miler, so who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's still not that trained. I mean, he's not. I mean, a year ago you could see I saw a thing of him when he ran that 151. He's, I'm sure he's done some training. You can't run that fast with that, but he's not. He doesn't have 7 or 10 years like Jakob of hardcore aerobic training. So he can improve. Could he beat him based off the way he beat that Cis guy? Yeah, he could. If Cole doesn't run well, which he's prone to doing, and
Yeah.
but I just think he's only human. I just think the ego and I just think that, the attention it would get if a 16-year-old beat him would be a lot. So I think he will handle him, but we've been wrong many times before, and we'll be wrong many times again.
Exactly. That's one of the mottos of the Track Stitch podcast, by the way. Did you see the comments from Hobbs Kessler? I thought this was really good. I'm going to read this one out on air because I think it's really good. And then there's the younger set coming up as recent prodigies continue to electrify the sport, not the least of which is Milrose winner Cam Myers. It's beyond me, says Kessler when asked for an explanation. Sam Ruthe, Cooper Lichtenhouse, on all those. I don't even know what to make of it. I know I've been the benefactor of this, but this fixation with the prodigy seems to be a really big thing. I feel like I almost got more attention in high school when I had the promise to do what I'm doing now. The people that have medal prospects are far more exciting to fans than people that are actually medaling. I think it's kind of weird, and I don't think it's super healthy to be focused on what you run at any given age. I think it should be consistency in your peak. I do acknowledge how exciting it is, but I don't know why. It's insane. Wow.
I think it was
That's an amazing statement from Cole, from Hobbs Kessler.
My respect levels for his intelligence and maturity have gone up like 10,000%. Not that I thought he was an idiot or anything. I didn't know anything about the guy. He was just a great runner on TV, but I thought it was very clever, and I thought it was perfect. And that's how I think about it too. Just there's so much. It's like when you have a Zion Williamson in the NBA or a Ja Morant, and they're going to be, and it seems to be much more intoxicating to us included.
Yep.
But so my take on it is no one cares what you or I think. I sit back, I enjoy the spectacle because it's happening.
No,
it's
agree.
happening.
And what an amazing, and shout out to Hobbs Kessler, good friend of Nick Willis, one of Nick Willis, big role model for him. So maybe via Nick, he watches the Track Stitch. If you're listening, Hobbs Kessler, well done. That was an amazing.
Yeah, he's dead right though, right? He's dead right because he's around that 4:49. It's almost like no one or 4:48. Sorry, and no one even like that augurs incredibly well for his season. But that's the world we live in, and you're right. I didn't create it. We certainly can't change it. So that's the world we live in. It is exciting, but guys, it's consistent with what we've said all along about this obsession on a very microscopic level with what someone's doing at this point, because it could all change in 6 or 4 or 12 months anyway in terms of the level they're at. But he's just, like I said last week, I hope his camp, I hope they're not so fixated on all that, because it's clearly showing now he's just a lot better. He's better than all of them considerably at that same age. So who cares?
Yeah. All right. Well, this is all going down in a couple of hours, so we shall see. All will be revealed. I've made my prediction extremely on a granular level. We'll see how that goes. Moving forward onto something maybe not so positive, Shano, news coming out of the Jakob Ingebrigtsen camp. Everybody knows this by now if you're a fan of the sport. The surgery on the Achilles, on the left Achilles. And this was only a matter of days after that comment that we discussed on the pod either last week or the week before that about, Jakob himself saying that he wanted to go after the 1,500, the mile, and the 5K all in one season. Man, how did you feel about this news? Was this shocking to you? It was definitely shocking to me that he'd actually gone under the knife. Still only 25 years of age. Obviously the best middle distance runner of this particular era, 3:26 over 1,500, the incredible world records over the 2K, the 3,000 meter, the 2 mile, Olympic champion, etc. Man, simple question here. What now for Jakob?
Not even 0.1% surprised. I talked a lot about what I thought was going to happen with him, and I don't want to just sort of ceremoniously urinate in my own ALO shorts I'm wearing this morning, but I did. This is what I said was going to happen. And when people, when people act the way he's been acting, and we get old, because let's be honest, we're old, Jason.
Yes.
You can see patterns begin to develop, and it's never going to manifest as, I don't want to do it anymore, I hate it, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted. It's always in an injury or something else that happens that the person who's the subject person can effectively, ostensibly distance himself in a way that it's some external thing that's beyond their control, and that's why they're having problems. But that sort of sclerotic sort of disconnect between the frenetic announcement of record, and all the hype, and being running at a much lower level the last few years, being injured, and then being actually more bullish and attention seeking and headline grabbing predictions, and then being like under the knife. It's sort of the how do I put it? It's sort of the ramblings of a madman, and that's, I feel like that's sort of where it's gone.
Yeah.
I really like him. I think he's been incredible for the sport. He's driven a lot of interest from these young European athletes.
Totally.
He's a cool dude. He would have had a hell of an upbringing. Like, oh my God, it's probably what, like, being a lawyer myself, knowing what he's actually accused father, I probably scratched the surface of what he could prove, or there's defamation laws, slander. Like, so I really like him. I'm not getting at him going, oh, look at him, he's an idiot. He's incredible. But I just call it as I said, in terms of where I think he's going from here. And I just don't think he's going to be back at that insanely high level.
No. And I think one thing to point out, you mentioned it as we're getting older, one thing that you do as you get older is you start to retrospectively look at yourself and how you used to behave when you were a kid, and you start to connect the dots on that. And I think this is something that's difficult to explain without sounding like, some old, man on the porch philosopher preaching about life to everybody. But it is just something that you begin to connect the dots. I mean, I had moments like this in my career too. I was having a tough time, I think in 2006, and I think there was the old NZ Run message board. This is not Let's Run, this is the NZ Run. Shout out to Rhys and Jakob for that creation back in the day. And I felt like I needed to go on there and explain myself because of that. And I felt extremely justified at the time of why I would do that. Now I look back and I actually have a different perspective on why I did that at the time. And it was a little bit of what you're saying now, when you get a little bit desperate and you start to see the wheels falling off, and you just kind of like, you just begin to feel it. You start looking for these little things to kind of prop you up, whether it's like social media posts, or whether it's, making comments in the media about, trying to drag yourself back into relevance. Oh yes, I'm going to go after these world records. It's almost like you're trying to speak things into existence when you know they're not going to happen. It's not all doom and gloom for him here, but I mean, this is a really tough road back for him. And I think it just really simplistically, when you're in your early 20s, this is not old, right? We're old. We're at our 40s now. When you're in your early 20s, even your mid 20s, to go under the knife for any kind of sporting injury is just a real big deal. And this sport is so hard, and it's so tough to come back from.
If you look at, there's a great saying that my mentor in Auckland here, John Banks, has said to me, that you're a product of your, effectively your 5 closest people to you that you interact with on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, right? And if I look at Nick Willis, who the caliber of people he surrounded himself with, and now Hobbs Kessler is a part of that setup. I look at Grant Fisher. I remember seeing Grant Fisher was on some boat somewhere exotic on his Instagram. But this is, when I still had Instagram, I got sick of it. But after allegedly being I think he was under the surgeon's knife or something, and I thought, in my head at the time, I thought, well, that's the end of him. He's clearly but Grant Fisher is a product of, was it Stanford? Yes. And looks like a very mature young guy, and he's able to go off and do that without sort of probably drinking too much or eating too much or partying too much. And he looks like a very methodical, sensible, almost old soul who's just consistently applied himself from, I'm sure, a very young age to be the product that he is today. And he's a great athlete. I look at, by comparison to those two, I look at Jakob, who was part of it looks like very oppressive family, like training system with 2 older brothers who were Olympic finalists, were world champs medalists, and the pressure on him and the effect all that training had to keep this young guy in check. But it looks like it was done perhaps more by force than, or acquiescence than consent. So I don't know now that he's out of that system. How's he feeling about himself day to day? How many people around him are able to tell him, hey, this is not very smart? Are the brothers yes men? Are the people around him sycophantic because he's a young a 20-year-old 1500 Olympic champion and the world record holder in the 3,002 mile 2K? I suspect it leans more towards, Jakob, you've got this. You're the man. Of course you are. You've got to,
right.
This point in your life, we're not going to tell you you're wrong. But I suspect someone needs to come in and go, mate, you are in the wrong here in terms of how you're seeing this. You need to go out there. Very difficult when you get someone who's accomplished that much at that age. But as you said, there's a disconnect between his talent, what he's done in the past, and the decisions he's capable of making today to advance his career further. They're not the same thing. You can't conflate.
Listen to this one. We'll go through this quickly. We've got a young fan here from New Zealand. He's a big Jakob super fan as well. I said I'd give him a shout out on the pod. Cole T Invest. Now he wrote some really interesting thoughts here on Jakob. We'll go over them quickly, and you can tell me what you think, and we can just dissect them quickly before the end of the pod. He says, I think you guys are underestimating Jakob and how serious he is about the records. Right. So obviously this was after the claim of the records. First, it's nothing new for him to state his goals very boldly, so it was not driven by him wanting attention. He is and deadly serious about backing it up. I think he has the tools too. 2025 is the first year he did not progress his outdoor PBs significantly as the 1500 and 3K marks from 24. He was even setting new world records early in 25. So there isn't a strong case for him having set his ceiling yet. In fact, stepping back, I see a track record of very solid ongoing improvement. What do you think?
My answer to that, I've kind of just said my piece already, but just to loop it back quickly into that, it's not that there's an issue with stating the goals. It's not that he's not serious, like at a conscious level of wanting to break them. It's his whole identity's been wrapped up in this. But there can be a disconnect between how you see things, and also if he's always stated them, that's fine. But if how he's actually feeling and what he's doing in the background, that's what drives the performance has changed, then it's sort of irrelevant that he has always A, stated the goals, and B, has always progressed, because the very thing we're saying has changed, which caused all these performances. If that's changed on a sort of almost cellular level, like psychologically and physiologically, then he hasn't got the basis to do what he's always done. That's what we're saying. I don't disagree with anything that you just read out. I mean, that's all sensible. I just think there's based on one assumption that he is the same person, more actually mentally than physically, than he always was. I don't know if he is. We've talked about this before. It's not like we've predicted it now.
I know. Listen to this next part. I think this is going to be more interesting. The critical issue is whether the injuries will be a long-term showstopper. But here again, I think you underestimate Jakob and his team. He really prides himself on how controlled he is and how sophisticated he is in risk management, and I think he's going to nail it. I'll go first on this one. This is where I would completely disagree. I think
because you've got inside knowledge to a degree.
I do, as well, a little bit. I think the injuries can be a massive showstopper, and I don't think it's about underestimating Jakob and his team. And then this comment of he really prides himself on how controlled and sophisticated he is in risk management. Well, here's the reality, right? He had an Achilles injury back in 2024 at the start of the season, which compromised him. You know, obviously his first race was that mile in Prefontaine. In our long term, that didn't hurt him in the season because he ran extremely well over the 1500, the 3K, set all those world records, became Olympic champion. But the same injury popped up in 2025 and it ruined his entire season. And now we're in 2026 and he's just gone under the knife. So I'm not really sure what the basis is there to say that his team and Jakob have really got a hold of this injury thing, because we're now looking at almost a 2-year period, where even longer, where this has been a massive issue, so much to the point where he's under the knife. Because Shano, I don't see Cole Hocker only a year younger with these same potentially, extremely bad injuries that are needing to go under a knife. I haven't seen Grant Fisher need to go under a knife. I haven't seen anybody need to go under a knife other than Jakob. I couldn't remember Al Garouge doing that, or Nuruddin Morsali, or these guys. So I would have to say, as much as I respect the opinion, I vehemently disagree with that. And there's just a number of little things that I see too. I mean, I saw this Instagram post of him on the bike literally days after the surgery, and I just thought to myself, this can't almost be real. Like, this had to almost be like a bit of a, just a social media trolling post. I don't understand why you would be on the bike. I get it. Some people say, well, he just wants to get blood flow going, etc., etc. For me, when you're recovering from surgery, your body needs absolutely every scrap of energy it can, and I think it's easy to say, well, my legs are mobile, so I wouldn't be using it. But, and then I see him wearing a pair of his bloody squish ball alpha flies or whatever. One of the big things that I believe have contributed to all this mess with him. And I'm just like, I'm not really sure. And this ties back to what you said, when you are surrounded by a number of people who only want to say yes to you and just kind of fuel what you think is the right way to do things. Sometimes that's not the way that well-functioning teams work. And sometimes, and you've worked in corporate environments, as do what I do now. Sometimes, you can't just be the person that's always liked. You have to make a hard decision. I just am not sure if anyone in Jakob's team is really doing that. And that's why we've had these same issues just popping up.
Yeah, would Gert let him jump into that world, that half marathon, things like that. It reminds you a little bit of, say, Ovett. He jumped in and ran that half marathon with his training partner, and Ovett came across a bit more swashbuckling and a little bit less perhaps considered and planned, mapped out, whereas Cole had a much longer career at the top level, because at a high level, because he seemed they were very methodical. I think Cole Hocker seems to be pretty careful and methodical. Our own Nick Willis was very careful and methodical. Once he ran into injury trouble quite a few times in a short space in the early 2000s, he got smarter and periodized more and had rest and was able to have a long career. So, I mean, the other thing with Jakob, he's been under the pump, like athletically and mentally, since he was probably like 5 years old. So he's like a 40-year-old athlete mentally. Yeah. So, it's very hard to impute any level of a normal mindset onto someone like him coming out of that environment, and the two older brothers were great athletes in their own right. So he's been in it since he was like conscious. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't disagree with that. The poster. I don't. It doesn't raise my heckles over like, oh, what are you talking? I can see how you could see it that way. I don't know if I do.
No, I don't either. Not on the injury management stuff, because otherwise this should have been something that was taken care of a long time ago. I mean, and especially after losing all of 2025, the fact that they weren't able to mitigate and rehabilitate this properly to the point where he tried to come back. He tried to, he had these races planned. He stated these public goals of world records, and now, that's up in the air again.
To be at the level he was at, to run 7:17 for 3K, like the amount of things that have to go right all at once in an athlete's life, and the level you need to be at to do that is mind-blowing. And
I think this is constantly underestimated, Shane?
Yeah, the fact, 100%, the fact he even did it, we always used to say, like, look through perhaps apocryphal or sort of stun mallet sort of goggles, so to speak, at Coleman's 720. It was the most revered of all the track records for distance runners. It was back-to-back 340s. You know how hard it is. I don't think you ran 340. I certainly did 1,500. And to stick those back-to-back,
right,
7.5 laps at 58.66. I remember it. That's what 720.67 was. So Jakob's must be 58 low. But
58.3, I think.
Yeah, 58.3. So that's mind blowing. 7.5 laps at 58.3. and with the Olympics when you're 20, all of that. So if he doesn't step foot on the track again, he's one of the legends of the sport, no doubt. So I think it's like with LeBron James, it's this like compulsive drive to see more and get more out of something. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
He does wrap up in saying that he sees no issues in Jakob getting back healthy, getting the 5K and the 1,500 world record. Again, I would say this. I always say this about the 5K record. There is one thing in common that 3 of the last 4 5K world record holders have had. They were also the 10K world record holder. I think it is far more difficult than people think. I don't think you can look at the 3K as the most accurate indicator of what's going to happen in the 5K. It's 2,000 meters longer, and I just think that that's going to be still a really tough one. I mean, he still needs to get some practice at running fast because he hasn't run his PR since 2021. And yes, he hasn't prioritized it. Clearly not. He's been more focused on the 1,500 and those other records, but still really difficult. The 1,500 meter record, we've discussed this before. I think you and I both agree. This is just one where, and as he gets older, right, it just becomes harder and harder and harder as you get more volume, more anaerobic damage to your body as it accumulates. It just gets really hard. I don't think I see running under 326.00 or 326.12, as some people might believe is the world record. I don't see that in the tea leaves for Jakob, even though I think we both agreed that he could, if he got back to maximum fitness, potentially add that mile record.
Should do our trivia questions.
Yeah. I don't have one. I was so
That's okay.
excited about this. We'll cut down on time. You hit me with the trivia question, and we'll see.
It's only one question. It's got a few libs though. It's quite fun. Okay, so what was the year in Mexico City? That's the one thing I didn't look at. 68. I was looking at so many stats. 68. So in 68 in Mexico City. 1 second. Let's get I've ill prepared for. 1 second. Sorry, I think.
You're right. Anyway, while you're doing that, Shane, thank you very much to Cold Tea Invest, young viewer from New Zealand, for those thoughts.
Yeah, we really
generating content on the podcast. That was amazing. And please feel free to write in with any of your comments. You can also email us at the Track Stitch at gmail.com. That is a real address too. If you've got any more in-depth mailbag questions like that, you don't need to leave a comment under one of those.
So Kip, the largest winning margin in Olympical World 1,500 meter global championship history is Kip Keino over Jim Ryan, 2.89 seconds in Mexico City. Yeah, 3:34.89 to 3:37.91. Yep. Or was it the other way around? 3:34.91 to 3:37.89.
Yes, 91 to
yeah. Do you know what is including world and Olympic champs? Do you know what is the third? Well, I'll give you just a second. What's the second largest ever winning margin? I'll give you a clue. It was a long time ago, but not pre-war.
Oh God. Was it before this performance?
It was.
Well,
if you really work through it, I think you'll get it.
Maybe. I know that Peter Snell dominated in 1964. That was a big winning margin, because I'm just trying to think about what Davies ran in bronze. And I just have this image of Snell clearing out. I'm trying to think of Herb Elliott. I've got a feeling, I know Elliott dominated in that one too. And he ran 3:35. Did he run 3:35.6 for that world record? Okay, we're running out of time on the podcast. I can't be bothered trying to think about everybody else. Ron Delaney, that's a guy from the quiz a few weeks ago. I'm going to say it was Herb Elliott in 1960.
2.80 seconds.
But that was the answer.
Yeah, he did really well. Yeah.
And then
I was just a bit worried that I was thinking
64.
I'm just looking, because actually it didn't come up on my ChatGPT, but I don't think it was more than 2.8 seconds.
No, that was a big margin. That's how good Herb. Yeah.
Okay, World Championships. This is part of the same question. What's the biggest ever margin in the World Championship 1,500? And what year?
Okay. Well, this one's a bit easier because we don't have to go back that far. Cram in 83 was incredibly close. I think because this is the thing, they're all much slower races, weren't they? So when you have these slower races, I think I've got a name in mind, because I know that Nuruddin Morsali would really put the smack down on guys in the final 400. You know, you and I have talked about that. The best closer in terms of the final lap that we've ever seen. every other race has been relatively tight. So I think it's either more Sally. It's definitely more Sally in one of the 91, 93 or 95 world champs, because even in 97 when LG ran 3:27.65, Noah Yen ran 3:27.65. Yen was like 3:28.3 in second, so that's pretty close. So I'm guessing it's Nuruddin Morsali. I'm giving myself a 1 in 3 chance. I feel like we did the Tokyo special, and this was one of our top races that we had on there. He definitely won that Tokyo race by a lot. So I'm going to say it was Morsali in Tokyo 91.
You are wrong. This is a good one.
Oh, was it Morsali?
No.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm just an idiot.
But you are dead right about Morsali. Morsali was 2.00 seconds in Tokyo. So you did right to think he was because those margins, that was the greatest of his winning. There's only one man who's won by more than 2.00 seconds in the World Champs 1500. Yeah, you definitely got second. All your logic was perfect, but there's an outlier, and this stumped me too, because I thought when I plugged it into my ChatGPT last night, I was frothing about asking you this. This popped up. I thought, no, that can't be right. So I went and checked that, and it is right. There's a guy there's only one man in history who's won the 1500, the world champs, by more than 2.00 seconds.
Well, it wasn't El Garouge, was it?
Nope.
No. Yeah. So okay, it's post 2000s. Then we're looking at 2005, Rashid Ramsey, but I think that was relatively close. 07 was Legat. 09 was our mate that destroyed the sports gambling syndicate at the time. Oh, I mean, it would have to be. Is it Kiprop? Oh man, I'm drawing blanks here. So then it must have been towards the end of the 2010s. No. Okay, 20. Who was London? Oh, that was like. Shane, I think I know the answer to this. It was Tim Chariot, wasn't it? Yeah. In Doha.
It was.
Yeah.
2.12 seconds over McCarthy.
That was pretty close. I keep forgetting about that guy.
Yeah.
Yes, that was, and that's one of the great 1500 meter performances at just.
It is.
Of all time. That was very Philbert Bailly-esque.
It was, and he arguably changed the sport in terms of.
That's true.
Bringing back in taking it on.
He did. Everybody looks at this era now with Jakob and Jakob's just a charger leading it from the front, but really it was Tim Chariot towards the end of that. Yeah, that was a historical performance, that one there.
Yeah, and, only man in history to have won the World Championship 1500 in more than 2 seconds.
Wow.
I thought it was a good one, because I discounted. I thought, Morsali surely is like the after. And I looked up, by the way, Snell 1.5 seconds back in the day.
Well, it was pretty close in the ballpark of that stuff. I hope proved my worth on.
No, you did very well. You did very well. But I would never have thought of the Chariot one. It just sort of got tucked away out of your consciousness. But sort of it was all Morsali. But Morsali was like second, third, and fourth fastest ever at the World Champs. But they're crazy margins, though, right? 2.98 seconds. I remember watching that. He just romped away from Ryan, who was heavily favoured.
Right.
And also Herb Elliott as well, 2.80 seconds.
Yeah, that's just
crazy.
Legendary. Slightly different, different era back then. Obviously, the sport was and the distances were evolving, and not quite as.
Do you know how much better those guys were than their peers? I was looking at the results. In the semis, they were 3:53.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Yeah, or 3:51. It was obviously they were sitting kick, but still, and you guy come out and run 3:34.8 at altitude, win by 3 seconds.
Shano, one of these days we're going to have to do the Peter Snell versus Herb Elliott difficult question over that one. It's such a great one. For us growing up as New Zealanders, Snell was always the guy, and we'd always sort of dream about what Snell would have done on modern tracks, etc., etc. But man, Herb Elliott was. I think Herb
Elliott. I read a superb article by. Joseph Romanos or someone who wrote a really eloquent, well thought out, and it was a New Zealander writing it. Maybe it's Roger Robinson, and it basically came down to, and it said, we don't want to hear this as New Zealanders, but he said, I just simply think that Herb Elliott simply would have just run away from him. And look, the way I think about it is he was so Hisham Al Garouge is like a modern day Herb Elliott, like not super quick over 800, the beautiful slight forward lean and ability to just drive it relentlessly from 600 out. I just, it's a bit like when, say, like a Mehdi Bala or a Nien or a Leggett sit on Al Garouge, but he had that interminably beautiful loping speed strength, and I just can't see Snell could have lived with it. I just don't. He was an 800, 1500 kicker.
Yes.
That's my feeling about it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm with you on that one too. You get asked all the time, like, what's your Mount Rushmore of milers? And it's like Al Garouge, it's Morse Elliott, it's Seb Coe, and that fourth spot is really up for grabs. And you think of, John Walker. We always want to put J-Dubs on there, the great man.
Herb never lost a race, and he retired when he was 21, and then he went on into business in Australia and made, in those days terms, like $1 billion. In old days, like he was a remarkably. He used to smoke durries on the train on the way into his races. Yeah, he ran like 147.6 as an 18 or back on a dusty Dust Bowl track. Like he was one of the all time. He was one of the best ever to do it. No doubt about it.
I think so as well. Well, that was a great question.
335.6 as well. Like Snell kicking off. He was notorious for not being in shape a lot of the time, and he was unbeatable in Tokyo in that 1500. But the guys he ran away from, and they were not even comparable. Michael Jay-Z was a great athlete, so I know he sprinted away from those guys in 64 like they were standing still. But I just can't see him doing, being close enough to do that to Elliott. But anyway, it's all just good fun conjecture.
Exactly, and I think it's also like a little bit of false logic to say, well, Snell ran 338 off a slow pace, so therefore, if it had been faster, he would have been able to run. Blah, blah, blah. But it just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Like, you can make up a lot of ground in a big finish, but it doesn't necessarily point to you being able to, it doesn't even mean that Snell could have maybe run 336 in a fast pace race. It just doesn't mean that. It's like there's so many more variables to it. But what we do know is that, Herb Elliott was just an absolute machine. So that doesn't surprise me.
Just to, I don't know, we're going on about it now, but it's like Walker. We did that story where Walker went to visit Snell in the US when he was a professor, and he went and did some 200s with him. He was like 50 at that point or something, and he couldn't believe how fast he was still, how talented the guy was, and he hadn't trained properly for years and years. And he said they looked at some training logs, and he said, first they said, do you think he could have improved his 800 or his 15 mile more? And he said, oh, definitely the 800. He said that his training logs, he just had these big blanks in there in the winter. Right. And then Walker was like, what was going on here? And he's like, oh, it's going to be fucked. like he didn't even train that much a lot of the time. You'd believe it because the difference in shape sometimes and that's not in any way to denounce the late, great Peter Snell, one of the absolute true greats of the sport. But it's Herb Elliott.
Yeah, I think so too, begrudgingly. All right, mate, shall we wrap it up?
Wrap it up.
You've got to head into the corporate offices and do some compliance work.
Something like that.
Surveying. Just teasing. All right, mate. Hey, that was a good podcast. Sam Ruthless Ruth is on in a couple of hours. Well, I'm sure we're going to be in contact over that one. We'll see what happens. If we've got anything earth shattering, I'll jump back on the pod later for an emergency update. We love the emergency podcast, but otherwise, mate, we will catch you in a week's time. I'll probably be back up at altitude at the 5280, just working on that aerobic development, capturing more, opening up my capillaries for a comeback, potentially.
To do the Sam Ruthless Ruth, the breathing through the nose.
Oh, I know. What a machine.
Crazy.
All right,
legend.
Mate. Awesome.
All right, mate. Take it easy.
Catch you in a week's time. Thanks, mate.